Okay, you're all set.
Just want to count our committee members who are here right now. Before I start. All right, I think we're one shy of a quorum, so we could, hopefully somebody will join in later and we can approve of the minutes later on in the meeting, but I'm gonna kick this off and begin the meeting. Okay, so welcome everybody to the Bronx Community Board 8 Public Safety Committee meeting. My name is Ed Green, I'm the committee chair, and this meeting will come to order. I just want to do a quick committee roll call to see who's here right now. So when I say your name, just please say here or present. Margaret Donato, Nick Fazio, I'm here. Myra Joyce, I don't think Myra can make it tonight. Sergio Villaverde.
Present.
Stephen Vasquez.
Present.
Georgia Santiago.
Present.
Ted Morris. Robert Kaplan. Okay, so we're a few committee members short. Right now, we don't have a quorum, but hopefully a few more of our members will join shortly. Okay, so first thing I wanted to do was introduce our guest, just to say hello to the Bronx DA, Darcel Clark. I can't say how pleased I am to have you here tonight. I really, really appreciate you coming out. You just want to introduce yourself real quick.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Green, and thank you to the Public Safety Committee. I am Darcel Clark, and I am your district attorney. I'm in my second term. This is my 7th year as district attorney. Prior to becoming DA, I served on the bench in the judiciary for 16 years, both here in the Bronx and 12 years on the trial bench and 3 years on the appellate court. And before that, I started my legal career right here in the Bronx District Attorney's Office. For 13 years, I served here. I'm a daughter of the Bronx here my whole life. I grew up in the Soundview section of the Bronx, grew up in public housing, went to New York City public schools. And when I left the Bronx to go to Boston College to get my undergraduate education, it was the first time I really had left New York City, first in my family to go to college. Graduated from DC, went on to the great Howard University School of Law in Washington, DC, and could have done anything from there, but I decided to come back to the Bronx because public service has always been my life. And I've given the last, 36 years now to it. I'm married to an NYPD detective. He is now in his 39th year with the police department. So I know a lot about law and order. I don't have to watch it on TV. I got it at home every day, So thank you for, allowing me to spend some time with you. It's not my first time at Community Board 8. Been there when I was a judge, have come several times as a DA, and always happy to speak to the community. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks again for accepting our invitation. I know one of your colleagues is here also who would like to introduce himself, perhaps.
Eric?
Hello, how are you guys doing this evening? Eric Sawyers. I'm from the Bronx DA's office, Community Affairs Unit. I usually attend the Community Board 8 General Board meetings as well as the 50th Precinct Council meeting, and I also attend Community Board 5 and the 46th Precinct Council meeting.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, is there any elected officials here right now at the moment that would like to introduce themselves? I don't see anybody. From what I understand, Assemblyman Dinowitz is going to try to make it here, but he has another commitment. He may be a little bit late, so hopefully we'll get him a little bit later on. Before we officially introduce our guests and get into the discussion, the the secretary's draft of the minutes was sent to each of the committee members. Oh, you know what? We're going to actually hold off on this because we don't have a quorum right now, so we can't approve of it. We'll hopefully somebody will remind me if I don't remember, and we'll do this later on in the meeting. Otherwise, we'll have to vote at another meeting, and if we don't get a quorum by the end of this meeting. Okay, so with that, the next order of business is I really, before I introduce our featured speaker, I just wanted to quickly try to frame this issue we're here to discuss, which is criminal justice reform. So that, those attending this meeting know why we're here. So in January of 2019, a series of major reforms took effect in New York, including elimination of cash bail for most misdemeanors and felonies, an overhaul of criminal justice laws requiring the prosecution to disclose information materials to the defense within 15 days of arraignment and whenever there's a plea offer rather, and speedy trial mandates, which translates to prosecutors' failure to be ready for trial within the speedy trial timeframes will result in dismissal of the case. So to me, those were the main issues that the biggest changes with that 2019 bail reform laws. So I just, I quickly wanted to just cite some examples of this that I felt became problematic. And in March of 2022, a guy named Frank Abaraka, I'm butchering the name here, smeared human feces on a woman's face. He was arrested, charged with forcible touching, menacing, disorderly conduct, and harassment. He was released without bail. He was arrested a few days later for a hate crime and an assault, and then he was released again. So this guy had 44 previous arrests. He openly mocked and cursed the judge, and the judge essentially couldn't do anything about it because she was bound by provisions of this law and the fact that judges are prohibited from determining dangerousness of the defendant. So because this guy hasn't killed or raped anyone, he's been freed on no bail under the 2019 state law. So, I mean, there's countless other examples similar to this one with individuals with 66 arrests, 90 arrests, and 178 arrests in this very neighborhood. There's actually somebody walking around with 178 arrests, and a lot of them were for burglary, that they were let out on the streets when it's pretty clear that these are antisocial career criminals that pose a significant risk to the community. So I just wanted to, state also that there have been calls to change these laws. So Mayor Adams, Governor Hochul, and State Democratic Party Chairman Jay Jacobs have all endorsed key changes to the criminal justice reform laws. And Siena College poll found that 65% of New Yorkers want stricter bail laws. So the recent New York State budget that was passed modified the 2019 criminal justice reform laws, but police unions are saying that the changes didn't go far enough to properly address this issue. So I was hoping that the DA could provide us some insight into what difference these post-budget bail reform changes will make, and what are some of the challenges our prosecutors face when crime is statistically on the rise. And lastly, I just really, again, I wanted to say that I really, really appreciate Bronx DA Clark taking the time to accept our invitation and speak with our community tonight. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, but I'd like to turn this over to DA Clark to hear what she has to say with us on the topic of bail reform. So DA Clark, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chairman Green, and thank you everyone for inviting me again. Well, that's a loaded question. It's like, oh, okay, bail reform. Wow. Yeah. You recited some of the issues and challenges. It was actually, the laws were passed in 2019, but they took effect in January of 2020 is when they took effect. Now, just to bring things into a little context, okay? Like I said, I was a judge for 16 years prior to becoming DA. And I can tell you, as someone who has set bail on people, as someone who has set people to Rikers Island and state prison, there were some inequities as to the way that bail have been handled and used in our city and in our state. I'm going to tell you right up front that I was one of the DAs that thought that some reforms needed to happen in bail, because people should not be sitting in jail just because they don't have the money to pay bail. But of course, we're talking about those low-level nonviolent crimes. And when the legislature changed the bail laws, originally the thought was no cash bail at all for anything. So people would either be in or out. The legislature weren't able to get that. So what they did was they said there was no longer bail eligible for certain crimes. And those were for misdemeanors and low-level nonviolent felonies. For violent felonies and serious crimes, there always has been the ability, even under the 2020 law, for DAs and for judges to be able to use their discretion to ask for bail. The problem became that once they changed those laws, and again, what used to happen before is that people were held in jail pre-trial, before they pled guilty, before they even had a trial. If they couldn't make the bail, they would be in. With the change in the law now, people were able to stay at home, continue to go to work, continue to go to school, make their medical appointments, et cetera, and be out while the charges were pending against them. I can tell you, 95% of the people that are charged and were able to stay home on those nonviolent felonies and those misdemeanors went back to court. And it was fair for them to be able to fight their cases on the outside and still be, valuable members of society. The problem became it was a small number of those who took advantage of the privilege that the legislature had given them by making it cases now non-bail eligible, and the judge taking away the judge's discretion, and they continue to be recidivists, just continue to commit crimes over and over and over. Those were the people were the problem, not the 95% who, granted, ended up in the criminal justice system and for various reasons, and we could talk about that a little bit more as to the root causes of people coming into the criminal justice system. But at the end of the day, the purpose of bail is to make sure that somebody comes back to court. Prior to the change in the bail laws, the old law, dangerousness was never one of the things that judges could consider. And I can tell you, because 16 years I did it, you could never include dangerousness. When they talked about changing the bail laws, this conversation always came up again that dangerousness should be included because certain people are a threat to the community, and that should be taken into consideration by judges. At the end of the day, that didn't pass. So what we were left with is what we got in January 2020. No bail for most misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies. Well, at the same time, COVID came, crime started increasing now in our country and in our county, et cetera, and prosecutors and police started going to the legislators and telling them, you're going to have to tweak this law. Not every case should be, some cases should be bail eligible, but they wanted to wait because it was still new. By the time January of 2020 came, the governor, as well as the legislature, we changed some of those bail laws and then made more crimes bail eligible. And for some of those people that were recidivists, that were, going through that revolving door of still committing crimes, they gave some more discretion to the judges to be able to consider them now for bail as opposed to when the law was first written. Fast forward now to 2022, we see the rise in crime all over, the rise in violence. I'm going to tell you, as a DA, it is not just the bail reform that is causing the rise in crime. I know that that's the narrative, but I can tell you based on the work that I'm doing, and when you look all over the country, it's not necessarily bail reform. It's a lot of things that are playing a role in that. But be that as it may, we had to start looking at the rise in crime and to see what else could be done. And the police, prosecutors, and others felt that there needed to, again, be more tweaks in the bail reform laws. So in this past budget session, some laws were passed. The governor hasn't signed them yet, so they're not complete. But what was changed was this. Now, all gun crimes are now bail eligible. So that takes care of a lot of the violence that we've been seeing. And then when you start talking about, again, those people that are going through that revolving door of continuing to commit quality of life crimes, those being those misdemeanors and those low-level felonies, they did give some discretion back to the judges now to deal with those cases. Because when they also changed the bail reform laws, one of the things that the police are allowed to do is give somebody a desk appearance ticket. That's still an arrest, but what happens is that a defendant gets a future date to come to court and the case is processed then. So when COVID hit, when they first passed the law, DATs were returnable in 20 days. That defendant had to come back. When COVID hit, it was pushed out because the courts were closed and the backlog and everything else. It became 120 days, 90 days, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a big backlog happening. So what was happening is that these defendants, those same ones who just taken advantage of the privilege that was given to people to be able to wait at home while their cases were pending, continue to commit these crimes. And these were DAT eligible crimes. So not only were they not seeing a judge right away, but the date was pushed out. And while they commit one crime and got a DAT, and they hadn't even seen a judge yet, they were going out and committing others. So the legislature, the governor, police recognize that, and they've changed that law now so that those individuals who are charged with those desk appearance tickets, once you have one desk appearance ticket, if you're out on a DAT and you commit yet another crime, you're no longer eligible to get another DAT. Now you have to go before a judge, and a judge has the discretion to set bail on somebody. So those are the two key factors that they tweaked in the bail reform. Is it perfect? No, but I can tell you as a DA, we need to look not only at the law enforcement part of how we do this, but we got to start talking about the members of our community. And I'm talking about all of our communities as to why they're ending up in the criminal justice system in the first place. As a DA, I should be the last resort. I shouldn't be the first resort that you all have to use in order to deal with quality of life issues that are happening in your neighborhood. People with mental health problems, there are people with drug problems, there's homelessness. All of those things are not crimes necessarily, shouldn't be the police and the DA. The mayor's office of homeless, should be dealing with that. The mental health providers should be dealing with that. People with drugs, those are the places where this should happen. Young people not having jobs, all of those things need to be addressed. Those are societal issues that need to be addressed. And when they're not, people end up falling into the criminal justice system, and then it falls on the police and the DAs. So that's where we are with the bail reform. Look, the cases that I need to ask for bail, trust me when I tell you, I ask for the bail, but it's not up to me. I'm not the judge anymore. So when I can make a bail application for somebody who I think is causing harm to the community or did something to a victim, or somebody who continues to keep committing the same crimes over and over, I ask for it. It's up to the judges. At least they have given some of the discretion back to the judges, but I got a 50-50 chance when I do that. You get a judge that still thinks that they should maybe be released on supervised release, meaning give them some kind of services while their cases are pending. There are things like electronic monitors that people could put on. There are a lot of ways that people can still, wait trial and not be in Rikers Island, because you all know the dysfunction that has happened at Rikers, the violence that is happening. Rikers is a terrible place for people to go. But unfortunately, if people are going to commit certain crimes, that is where, when I ask for bail, that they're going to end up going. And people have to be held accountable. So, I believe that we can have public safety and reform at the same time. And that's how I've been trying to run my office.
Thanks a lot. You're very, very thorough, and you know your business, obviously. Before I open it up to the committee, I just wanted to ask you one question also, because you mentioned supervised release. And one of the more high-profile incidents that happened in the last 6 months was the murder in Chinatown. That, you know, the woman was stalked and she was stabbed 40 times, and the alleged killer was on supervised release, and he had 3 open cases, one for punching somebody on the subway. So with regards to supervised release, and again, this may not be your department per se, but I'm a little in the dark about how these programs are run and how people are monitored in these programs, and how an individual had 3 open cases can remain in a supervised release situation while he's out there committing other crimes. So that, I don't know if you want to.
No, I can address that. And thank you for the question. I appreciate that. See, that is part of the dialogue that we need to have in the community, because you know what? When the legislature passed these laws, and again, I told you some of the reforms I were in favor of because there were disparities and inequities in the laws. And I think that we needed to level the playing field. But at the same time, you can't pass laws and not put money into the laws that you have passed. So what has happened is that we as prosecutors end up having a lot of unfunded mandates. They expect us to do a lot of this work, but they don't put the money into it. So something like supervised release to me means they need to put the resources into what are you going to do to make sure that that person is supervised. And I got to tell you, quite frankly, supervised release to me is a joke. It is not built the way that it should be. The money has not been put into it. You have to hire people in order to keep up with people. I mean, basically supervised release is you call somebody and say, make sure you go to court this day. Some people don't have phones. Some people are homeless that are charged with these crimes, like that individual you're talking about. How can you possibly supervise somebody like that? So before you put somebody in a program, you got to make sure that it's staffed up and resourced well enough to make sure that supervised release is going to be something that should be handled. The same thing with the electronic monitoring. You know, they put an ankle bracelet on. It's like supposed to be home arrest. Well, in order for somebody to get an electronic bracelet, they got to have a home. You know what I mean? So you can't put somebody in a electronic monitoring if there's nowhere for them to go. Also, in order to put on electronic monitoring, again, money has to be put into that. That means somebody has to watch that person 24 hours. That means you need at least 3 people, 3 shifts of somebody watching monitors to make sure that they don't break away from where they're supposed to go. Again, if you don't put the money into it and you don't hire, and they have the sheriff's department doing that now. When they started electronic monitoring, there was 100 electronic monitors for the whole city. I mean, I could use that in the Bronx in a day, right? So unless the lawmakers put the money behind the laws that they are passing, they're not going to be effective. So that is what happens. So when you talk about somebody who's in supervised release, again, that's somebody that could have been bail eligible, maybe not, but the alternative, and during COVID, they didn't want to put people in Rikers and different things like that. But if you're going to put them in supervised release, then actually tell us, what does that supervision mean for that particular individual? It should mean different things for different people, but it doesn't always work. They need to revamp that. So in all of these reforms and changes that they're doing, there are things that it's not just the bail law that needs to be fixed. There's just systems in place that need to be fixed. The probation department, the sheriff's department, the family court, the criminal courts, the police department, the DAs, all of us play a role in it. And if we don't have the money and the resources to make it what it needs to be, then the laws are not going to be effective.
Thank you. I could probably ask you a dozen questions, but I'm not going to suck up all the air in the room. I see a few hands up. Laura Spalter, Chair of Bronx Community Board 8, Laura Spalter has a question.
Thank you for such an informative report. I've read that there's been an exodus of ADA attorneys from district attorney offices in the Bronx and other boroughs. I believe that some blame lies with new mandates related to the 2019 bail reform regarding discovery laws. Can you comment on this problem and how it affects public safety in the Bronx?
All right, thank you for the question. So again, it's the law took effect in 2020 of January. And what you're speaking about are the discovery laws. That's different from the bail reform law.
Right, right,
So
right.
what discovery is, this discovery is the evidence that the DA has to turn over to defendants when they're accused of crime. Now, even before they changed the law in 2020, DAs always had the responsibility and obligation to turn over evidence. So it wasn't that they changed the law that we never had to turn over evidence and now we have to turn over evidence. It's always an obligation that we've had and one that we all take very seriously. What they did change was the timeline as to when that evidence needed to be turned over and also exactly what evidence we were talking about. So for example, before the discovery laws changed, people could, speak to the DA, the defense attorney, talk about the charges. They know the charges. We turn over some of the discovery because the obligation was that we had to turn it over before trial. It was no real timeline. But when they put the timelines in, it went from whenever, anytime before hearing a trial to 15 days after the arrest. Tremendous amount of evidence that has to be turned over during the life of a trial, but let alone for us to have to do it in 15 days was totally undoable. Because the evidence that we have now, we have body-worn cameras, surveillance, police paperwork, medical records, all kinds of things that are the evidence which the defendants are rightfully entitled to, and they should have it before they went to hearing, before they went to trial, and even before they plead guilty. They should know the evidence against them. The problem was that they made the timeline too short, and it's almost impossible for us to get all that amount of evidence within a 15-day period. So again, that was something else that turned out to be impossible. By July of 2020, they tweaked it a little bit. So instead of it being 15 days, the legislature changed it so that if somebody was incarcerated after they were arrested, we had to turn over that evidence now within 20 days of them being arrested. Okay, we got 5 more days. Hey, I'll take what I can get, right? And then for those who were not incarcerated, within 35 days of them being arrested. So again, to me, still artificial timelines, very difficult to do. And now we have to turn it over for everything. So it wasn't just the stuff that was relevant to the case. It's anything that's even related to the case, which meant a whole body of evidence that we never had to turn over before. Some of it not even relevant. And you will get some defense attorneys who will say, they've said to me privately, Darcel, tell your people to stop sending me all that stuff. I was like, nope, that's the law and we have to follow it. So it's quite a bit of evidence that has to be turned over. So with that in mind, with the increase in the cases, with the shortened timelines, with not giving us the money to be able to deal with it, and then COVID came. So now everything we used to do in paper now had to become electronic because the courts were closed. And in order for us to turn all of that over, it's easier to do it electronically, but we didn't have the case management system to do it. Defense attorneys, even if I could get it to them, they didn't have the systems in their office to receive it. So it just became one big problem. So in this last legislative session, they again tweaked the discovery laws a little bit more. Again, not changing those timelines, but really starting to think about what are the things that are most important that a defendant needs in order for a DA to go forward. So now when we have to turn over that evidence now, once we turn it over, we have to file a certificate of compliance. That's a requirement now. It's called a COC. And what that means is that we're signing a document saying, these are all the things, these many pieces of evidence that we turned over, and we have to delineate it and say we've turned all of that over to the defendant. And now that we've turned that over, we are ready to go forward for trial. And then we file a statement of readiness. The problem is that just getting to the point of being able to sign that certificate of compliance, it was sometimes impossible to get everything. So let's say, for example, you have a case where there was an assault in a store, right? 20 police officers show up, right? Only 4 of them go inside to speak to the victim and the police speak to, the witnesses or whatever. 2 stay outside and the rest go back on patrol. Never did anything on the case. But for that particular case, I have to find all 20 cops, find out who there were, get their body worn camera, get their memo books. And we already know that 10 of them never went inside. They did nothing, but that's a requirement that we now have to meet. So having that kind of burden on my assistants, dealing with COVID, coming out of all of this stuff, virtual and everything else, it has just become too much of a burden and people are leaving. They could go to a private law firm and do that document, search, because really what they became were paralegals. They're just pushing papers, finding papers rather than, preparing their case for trial. So now with all that added pressure, and then we don't get paid what we should, both DAs or defense attorneys, to do all of this important work, and people just started leaving. I've lost 104 lawyers.
Well, it sounds terrible. I don't know. It sounds terrible. They have to fix this.
We're trying. We are trying. They tweaked the discovery laws a little bit. Let's see. Again, it's never far enough, but we'll take anything that we can get. As long as, I think that the legislators did start realizing the burden that was on us. And also the fact that, defendants don't need every single piece of paper for a case to be able to go to trial. So, as they start, again, it's about giving more discretion back to the courts. The judges decided this stuff all along. So to change the laws to give the judges less discretion is also what made it a little bit more difficult. But it is a responsibility as a DA. I respect, I honor, and I teach my assistant each and every day that that's how we have to do this. Even before they changed the laws, I made my lawyers, if we weren't seeking a jail sentence on somebody, that they shouldn't be asking for bail, because that's not what we're about. We could resolve it in another way with an alternative to incarceration, or meet the root causes of what is bringing somebody into the criminal justice system. That's how we should do it. Bail, I wasn't asking for when we didn't really need it. And that's when they changed the law. They changed it to what my policy was already. Same thing with discovery. Just because the law said we didn't have to turn it over until the eve of trial didn't mean that that's what we should do. I don't train my lawyers to do that. So they were already turning it over earlier and turning over as much as possible. Then they changed the law. Now it's the law, we have to do it. So it was something that we were already used to, but unfortunately, the amount of discovery that they need us to turn over is a lot more than we were required before.
This is the law of unintended consequences, and I hope they fix it. And thank you for such a exhaustive answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. We have 2 committee members' hands up, Bob Kaplan and then Sergio.
Thank you, District Attorney, for joining us tonight. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm looking forward to seeing you, hopefully in person. I know that someone from your office contacted me the other day around some bias issues and hate issues that you're going to be featuring in May.
Mhm.
I'm wearing 3 hats. We're asking you this question. One is, of course, a member of this community board and of this committee. The other as the executive director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York, and thirdly, as one of the main founders of the New York Jewish Coalition on Criminal Justice Reform. And that coalition recently brought a group of 12 rabbis, several of them from the Bronx, to Rikers Island to see firsthand what was going on there. And certainly we are beginning to unpack what you so aptly described as the root causes of mass incarceration, and the lack of investment in the kinds of services and the kinds of needs that people have prior to being incarcerated, and certainly after being incarcerated. How the fact that it costs almost $500,000 a year to incarcerate someone, where the kinds of monies that are allocated for them prior to or prevention of being incarcerated, or as you described it so well, the alternatives to being incarcerated within the context of society, of becoming more a part of society rather than involved in criminal activities, is just sort of out of whack. It shows the lack of prioritization of how we treat people from birth often, and that predicate them to being part of the mass incarceration syndrome in America. One of the most horrible things I ever heard was that the first time many people, particularly here in the Bronx, see a mental health professional is in handcuffs. And then the mental health services they receive once they're on Rikers or in one of the jails is often substandard. How can we become better advocates in and Laura just said, needs to be fixed. Well, it needs to be fixed, but it needs to be fixed in a very comprehensive, strategic, and thoughtful way. And not by pointing the finger at, as you pointed out so well, at one aspect of a legislative process that was looking to fix a very broken system. How do we become a better partner with you and your colleagues across the city to ensure that we reprioritize how we approach these root causes so that less are predicated towards a life of criminal activity that would lead to incarceration?
Thank you so much for that question, Rabbi Kaplan. It's also very good to see you as always. Yeah, we have to think globally. You know, everybody is so set on, you know, crime is up, throw everybody in jail. We cannot throw everybody in jail. I'm telling you, I'm the district attorney of this county. I cannot prosecute my way out of the problems that is happening in this county. I'm just not going to be able to. I don't have the lawyers to do it. I don't have the staff to do it. And quite frankly, it's not the way to do it. We need to invest. It's a spectrum of services that need to be done. Look, I know my job, and my job is prevention, dealing with those people that have those mental health issues, getting them the services that they need in our communities. We can't say, I don't want people walking around with mental health problems in my neighborhood, just throw them in Rikers. We can't put them there. These are our community members at the end of the day. Somebody who's homeless, you gotta, you know, find them shelter, some kind of, and not just put them in a shelter where they make them go in at a certain time, okay? It's dangerous inside, and in the morning they kick them out. And then what is happening inside that shelter? Nothing. Bring supportive housing to people where they could get the mental health treatment they need, the substance use disorder, train them to get jobs. You know, all of these things that we could do. If we solve those societal problems, I would have less to do in the criminal justice system. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like people are not going to commit crimes, because I will always have a job, unfortunately. You know what? But I shouldn't have to deal with all the people that are in the system, because there are ways that we can fix it. We need the community to speak up to the mayor and the city and the governor and say, put the resources in our communities and let us help those who live in our community that need the help to keep them from going into the criminal justice system in the first place. Then for those who are going to end up in the system where I do have to see them, then let me find out, how did this person get here? Who is this person? Because we got to put humanity in this. I know that I'm the DA, and I'm unapologetic about standing up for the rights of victims. I do that every day. That's my core job and the core values that I have to do. So I'm never going to apologize for being the DA, because people don't like DAs till you need us. People don't like the police until they need them, right? But I still have a job to do. So I'm not going to apologize for being a DA, but I'm also not going to apologize for being the type of district attorney that understand that people make bad choices sometimes. And not all people that end up in the criminal justice system are bad, or are they criminals? And we have to figure out how they got there, what is the cause of them coming, and what does justice look like in that particular case? And it may mean different things for different people. It may mean an alternative to incarceration. It may mean a job or mental health services, or you know, or getting them back into school or whatever. Or it may mean state prison. It means a lot of things. So I'm going to do that as balanced as I can, but I'm going to treat every individual that comes before me as a human being, because that's what they deserve. And then we let the court system decide, the jury and the judges will decide what happens to them then. And then there's also those people that are going to return, people who are going to be held accountable, because it's about accountability and what that looks like for everybody that causes the harm to our community. And once they return to the community, where do they go? They're going to end up going right back where they came from. We got to make sure that they have the resources and the skills and the capability to come back to our community, not to reoffend, to start the crime all over again and make our communities unsafe. So we have to do more on re-entry services as well, so they don't go back into prison or jail. So that's my job. That's the spectrum. It's prevention, it's prosecution, and it's re-entry. And it's all about community engagement, because again, we can have public safety and fairness and reform at the same time, but you got to put the resources in all of it, not just one end of it.
Thank you so much. Really deeply appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so resources seem to be a recurring theme here. I see Sergio.
Thank you, DA Clark, for joining us tonight. I submitted a few questions that were pretty specific to some of the things in our neighborhood. As our chair had alluded to in his opening, we have individuals specifically on some of the lower level crimes that are basically terrorizing the neighborhood. I mean, they're part of the community, but there's also 50,000 other people who are being terrorized by these single individuals. They're not killing anybody. I know that the trend has been, we'll get to them when they kill somebody, but things that affect us don't often reach that level. And after a certain, and I know that I've heard you speak before that you do the alternatives to incarceration and such. However, at what point do we say that somebody's making the choice to not be the beneficiary of a program? How many programs do we give the individual after 178 arrests? And they're being pled down and the person's right back. They may not, they're not going to get a long time necessarily for breaking into a car, but those 6 months, that year is a year that the neighborhood doesn't have that happening. And this happens to thousands of people because most of them don't get reported. You walk down Reservoir Avenue, there's glass broken. My neighbors aren't reporting them at this point. They just fix it, go to work and fix it. So do we have any statistics on the recidivism rate for people who do get the alternatives to incarceration? What's the success rate of that program? Because as you said, this is not a law enforcement issue, but we're catching things at this level. We're catching things late. But my concern is always breaking one system to match the other systems. Mental health should be out there. All the other systems should be out there doing their job. And, frankly, I'd like, the other community members to also, feel like they're safe, like they can walk safely, they can park their car. We hear it every week from every month from the precinct. Don't do this, don't leave anything in your car. Don't do, it's really, blaming the victim. It's not saying that, people shouldn't steal your car. But what are we doing? Those are a few questions. And I submitted a few, but I'll stop there for the moment.
All right. So one, thank you for that question. And it's one that's difficult to answer because, again, it's on a case by case. What we do is that we work with the precincts to know who these priority offenders are. Because like I said, because I can't prosecute my way out of it, and because the laws are the way they are, they're not going to be held in necessarily because the laws have changed. But what we can do is start building investigations and cases against those who are the ones that are the most offensive, those that are really causing the most harm, and trying to build cases against them. I'm not going to stop trying to get them the help that they need, but there does come a point where we're at the point of no return. We've done all that we can, and then it'll be up to the judge as to whether or not the judge imposes an alternative sentence, even when we give them the alternative to incarceration. The other problem that we have, and I know this is not a great answer, is that the data is hard for us to collect because, again, so many things are being put on us now that these are the things that drive how we do the work now. But our systems were never built to capture all the information that we need to know in order to look at the data, in order to determine how we do this. Right now, we have to wait until they get arrested, look at their rap sheet, hopefully see what they got before. And remember the cycle before 2020, people, and you know better than anybody, you've been in the court system a very long time, you know, they plead guilty, they get out and they just cycle out. Nobody is doing what they can to help them. So we'll do the best that we can, but we do get to points of no return. I know in the 5-0, we had some car cases, you had some real priority offenders, and we worked really hard with the police department. We were able, to get some of them incarcerated and, in state prison. And some of them have current cases, a stabbing, a carjacking, attempted murder, and the person is remanded. So they do get to a point where enough is enough. And I tell you, anytime I can ask for the bail for a person that really deserves it, I will do it. But I sympathize with the communities that have to deal with the quality of life issues that also come along with living, in the Bronx. It is very difficult. Nobody wants their car broken into. I mean, I went to the 4-5 precinct council meeting maybe a month or two ago, and they're stealing catalytic converters off of people's car. That is insane. You know how much money that is or whatever? So again, we have to find the hot spots. We have to really start doing investigations. That's the only way we could build up the cases, because the one-offs just go in and out.
I got you. I got you, Madam DA, but we're from the Bronx, and sometimes I feel with the programs, which I'm a favor of, that we're getting played. Like people will say, oh, this is how I'm not going to go to jail. And after, I'm not saying 1, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, 4 strikes, but there are people on their 20th strike. Mm-hmm. At some point, there has to be some accountability. That's a point. And I'm sorry to hear that we don't have any statistics on the alternative to incarceration. We're
building them now, but I don't have the statistics on people who came before. We're starting to build them now. They're in the programs now. We're seeing, where they work. But like anything else, I was a judge. You take a plea to a program, but there's also a jail alternative if you don't complete it. And that becomes the discretion of the court as to whether or not the court wants to impose that alternative sentence, whether or not we decide we're going to give them another chance. There are points of no return. Every day we go in and say, you know what? He's had enough chances, judge. Give them the jail alternative. That's what they agreed to. Some judges do it, some judges don't. So, I mean, that's the reality of it. I know that it is uncomfortable. It may seem unfair, but that's the system that we have. And when I talk about the resources that I have, when I'm dealing with people that are getting shot and killed, 11-month-old babies sitting in cars, a 16-year-old girl walking home from school, like I got to put the resources where I have to. And again, like I said, I can't prosecute my way out of all of this, but I'm paying attention to all of this. And even though there's a lot of volume, I have to prioritize. And even those quality of life issues, I still prioritize. And what we'll do is look at those top priority offenders. As we get them off the street, the amount of crime that happens in communities will lessen, because we're concentrating on those who are causing the most harm, even in those quality of life situations.
Thank you. I sent my other question to Eric already, so I'll just leave that one for a response. I don't want to monopolize the rest of the time. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam.
Hey, Sergio, this may be helpful to your question, and these statistics come from the Office of Court Administration and the Division of Criminal Justice Services, and they were compiled from January 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, with regards to alternative to incarceration. So among those in supervised release, 41.3% were rearrested before their cases were resolved, and another 9% after their first cases closed. So that's over 50% rearrested. Okay, so those numbers are off the charts as far as I'm concerned. So that may be a little bit of a guideline to what you were asking.
Right, no, I'll wait, I'll wait for the DA's office when they do get the stats on what's going on currently as well, but thank you for that, Ed. That is informative, but I'm always concerned what's going on here at home, so, thank you, Ed.
Okay. All right, so I see a couple of hands up, but is anybody up from the committee have any questions for DA Clark? Is there anybody from our committee before I open it up to the public? I don't see any hands from anybody from our committee. So Lisa Fatanto has had her hand up for a while. Lisa.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm a constituent. I'm a citizen. I live in Riverdale. And I appreciate what DA Clark has said, and I understand in theory what she's saying. However, when you live in a community where people are getting burglarized over and over and over, the police do not even bother coming because they say we can arrest them, but they're going to be right back out on the street. So they don't even do their jobs anymore. Then we have had a humongous problem with the catalytic converters of thievery. Same thing. They were caught. They were out that same day. So what good does that do? Like, what I'm really concerned about is many New Yorkers. And all right, the guy that fixed my friend's catalytic converter, his sister is a judge. He told me that the judges are being cursed at and laughed at in court because they know they're going to have to let them go. So how does anybody think that that's a good idea? Right? At the very beginning, Mr. Green said, there's been a rash of burglaries. People are arrested and they're right back out on the street and they commit the same burglary the next day. So how does that help the community? This is the issue. I mean, the problem that I'm most worried about, me personally, is that so many people are so annoyed and so upset, and Governor Hochul has done nothing about this, that she's going to lose in 22. She's going to lose. And we're going to wind up with freaking Tom Suozzi because of the permissiveness of this bail reform. This is too much for the normal, everyday working person in this community. All we're doing, we're getting laughed at by the police. They don't want to do their jobs. The only thing they patrol the neighborhood for is expired inspection stickers so they can make their quotas on their tickets. And when you talk to them, they're like, well, what are we going to bother for? We're going to bring them in and they're going to get out right away. So, and I can say, if I was a cop, I would do the same thing. I mean, the judges have no discretion when it comes to these, like, if you want to call it a low-level crime. Mr. Clark started out about the guy that was smearing feces on somebody at 242nd Street well, I don't know if that's Riverdale over there. Anyway, he was out that day. The next day he committed another crime. How does that help anyone? I mean, I'm sorry, but
I did ask for bail, but it didn't get set.
oh, I believe you. I'm not faulting you. I'm saying that, but the community, then you're worrying about why you're losing DAs because their work is useless if everybody's getting out. So they're working, they're pushing their paper around, and the next day the guy's back or the woman is back, whoever it is, doesn't matter. I mean, the cops aren't bothering even to do their jobs anymore. They're laughing at the governor. They're laughing at the mayor. I mean, this mayor was a big beacon of hope because he was a cop.
Lisa, do you have any specific question for DA Clark? Lisa.
How is allowing the quality of life in the neighborhood helping anyone? It's only helping the criminals.
I guess that would be a quality of life question.
I guess so.
I'm actually big on that because I think that when the quality of life crimes are not enforced, it starts to kind of demoralize a neighborhood. And, you know, when you see community standards start to deteriorate, you know, a lot of things go. She also mentioned burglary, which, again, to me, that's should be taken much more seriously than it is in terms of prosecuting, I always feel, because I've heard of situations, you know, if somebody's burglarizing an apartment or a house and that person comes home or is home, it's a life or death situation. And I've heard of situations where that can be, even though it's not categorized as a violent crime, if somebody gets caught for burglary, it could very easily escalate into a violent crime if the person comes home. I know, you know, I've heard of somebody getting their throat slashed because they walked in on their own apartment getting burglarized.
But
So I don't know.
those kind of burglaries are bail eligible, and we ask for bail for those when it's inside a dwelling or somebody's home. Is different from the commercial burglary. So there's a distinction between which burglaries that you're talking about. Somebody going in somebody's home, you better believe that I'm on that, and we're asking for bail because nobody should be able to go into somebody else's home with the intent to steal or harm anybody in any way. So those are different than, you know, some of the others that we're talking about. So I think there's a distinction there. But, you know, I hear your frustration, Ms. Furtado, and I understand. But think about my frustration. It's my job to do this, and it is difficult for me to be able to do it because of, you know, all of the factors that you've talked about. But at the end of the day, this is what you elected me to do, and I'm still going to try to do it. I think outside the box to try to find a way to hold people accountable. And I guess the only hope that we can have is I know that people would rather people be behind bars or in jail, but when they're charged, they are still charged with a crime. And eventually we are going to get to be able to go to trial on that. So members of the community like you that care about your community, one of the things people always ask me as DA, well, what can we do? Well, one of the things I need you to do is serve on juries. Serve on juries. And you all know when you get that subpoena, jury duty. Nobody want to serve jury duty. But that's one of the ways that you can help us, because even though they may not be held right now, eventually accountability has to come. And that's when we go to that hearing or that trial. And when that trial happens, we need concerned citizens to be there in order to determine whether or not I meet my burden to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's not hopeless. I know it's very frustrating, but just because they're being charged and they're back out doesn't mean that the case is over. There's still cases pending against them. And as soon as we could get this COVID situation over and we could really open up our courthouses and really start having the trials that we need, I got lawyers ready, willing, and able to do those trials and hold these people accountable. And it is at that time then the judges have the discretion in order to sentence them to whatever it is that they deserve for the crime that they committed. You're on mute, Mr. Green.
Ed, you're muted.
Thanks. Sorry about that. We have two more questions I'm going to take, and I don't want to monopolize your time. I know you're very busy, and I'm very grateful that you came to address us. So, David Gelman.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Ed. I'm a member of the community board as well. Madam DA, thank you very much for this presentation. It's very insightful to understand what's going on in your office and how you're dealing with these rules. I mean, I remember back to the suicide of Khalif Browder, which was the impetus for the bail reform law. I think it's important for us to keep in mind, you know, in the context of all the things that are being discussed, is the worst thing that society can do is execute an innocent person. The second worst thing society can do is to imprison an innocent person. And I think we have to keep that in mind. And I think that you hit the right notes in your request for changes relating to gun cases, relating to desk appearance tickets, and to violent crimes, and making sure that judges have the discretions on those things. The rest of the issues that we are suffering with as a community, we need to deal with that as a community, as a government. But I don't think that's your responsibility, though I'm glad that you are trying to find alternatives in mental health, et cetera, et cetera. But we still at bottom, we have to keep in mind that we as a society are responsible to make sure that we are not incarcerating innocent people. And I'm really spooked by all this stuff about the catalytic converters and lots of other stuff. But that's a small part of life here in New York. And I think that we have to keep in mind that we have to make sure that we are not incarcerating innocent people, but we have mechanisms that you described that protect us from the dangers of that 5% that you say really are truly dangerous. I really appreciate your presentation, and keep at it, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Susan,
Yes, can you hear me?
yes.
I live in North Riverdale. I'm on Mashalou and in Huxley, and my catalytic converter was stolen. So the reason I'm on this call is for that reason. I reported to the police. So this really specifically is for the Captain Gervin.
Susan, can I interrupt you for 1 second? We're going to have a police report right after this. We've just brought in DA Clark to speak about bail reform. We're going to do the police report next. And if you could raise your question with Captain Gervin, we'll do a police report.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, so with no further hands up, I'm really appreciative that DA Clark came to visit us and speak on this issue. You're very impressive. You know your business, like I stated earlier, and you're very personable and likable from where I'm sitting here. So it's I think we're in good hands. I just believe that most people that I talk to are concerned that the type of bail reform laws that we've been discussing are giving back rights and bestowing rights on people that rob others of their rights. And lawmakers are essentially explaining away and validating criminal behavior. And what this leads to is like the cumulative corrosion of community standards, and because communities get destabilized when laws are not enforced. So that seems to be the main concern of most people I talk to, that we just want our laws enforced, the laws that are already on the books. And if laws have been changed that are not going to protect the people who the laws are intended to protect, and rather serve the people who are allegedly breaking the laws, then we have a big problem. So that's, I think, what's at the core of a lot of the bail reform issue with the people I talk to and their concerns. So it seems like after this budget has been passed, there have been a few tweaks. Let's hope that it makes a big difference, or makes a difference. And I don't know if you'd like to close or finish with anything, but we just appreciate having you here, and hopefully we can continue our dialogue with you. Hopefully we won't need to reach out to you for any catastrophes that are happening in our community, but it's nice to know that you're here, and I have full confidence in you as a DA moving forward.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I'm willing to come at any time. This is why I'm here. This is why I was elected, to do the job of the people. I work for you. Okay. I work for you. And whenever you have questions or you need things explained, that is why I'm here. This is what I do. And I have dedicated staff that believe in doing what we need to do for the safety of the people of the Bronx. We're like the second largest employer in the county. We believe in the Bronx. I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. This is what I do. So
I know you
thank you for allowing me to serve you in the capacity that I do. And you all have a great evening.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Oh, and I just wanted to also give a shout out to your office. I know you guys are having a Bronx Child Safety Fair.
Yeah.
And that would be Saturday, April 30th.
Yes.
And at PS5 Port Morris School, that's at 564 Jackson Avenue. And that's your 5th annual Bronx Child Safety Fair. So that sounds like a good thing to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for all your leadership and all that you do, Community Board 8. I really do appreciate it. It's a great partnership.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so with that, I'm just gonna look over real quick to see if we have a quorum and we could perhaps pass our minutes. We do. Okay, so I'm going to, did everybody get the minutes? I guess everybody got the minutes. And does anybody have any questions about the minutes? If there's no questions or problems with the minutes, I'd like to take a vote on approving the minutes. Anybody, is there anybody opposed to passing the minutes or wants to abstain? I don't hear anybody. I don't see any hands. So the public safety minutes of the meeting held on March 15th are approved unanimously and will go before the board for approval. Okay, so with that, 50th precinct, are you still with us? Captain Gervin, I see your name there. Captain, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I just had on mute.
Very good. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you, Mr. Green.
Good, good. I hope you didn't have any questions for DA Clark. Well, we still have a member of the DA's office here if you do. But so you have a police report for us.
Sure. And like some of the residents are already concerned about, property crime is way up in the 50 precinct. And this is not only the 50th precinct or the Riverdale section of the Bronx concern, it's citywide trend. Grand larceny of our automobiles for the month up 138%. Grand larcenies, like just property theft, up 113%. Burglaries, felony assaults, and robberies, they're also up. Rape is the same, and we haven't, like I said, we talk about property crime all the time. We're not a violence command. We haven't had a murder here since August, and we'd like to continue that trend. So that's where we are. Property crime, just like the previous Riverdale constituent was concerned about, the catalytic converter conditions here, the theft of cars, catalytic converters, tires and rims, vehicle accessories, and as well as falls into the grand larceny, property removed from where they're in of the cars, whether it's a computer they leave in there or a wallet or a credit card, that all counts towards our statistics of the crime that happens here in Riverdale. Our commitment to that is pretty good. We have 2 anti-crime teams called the public safety teams. They're out there about 18 hours a day, starting in the afternoon, all through the night and into the morning. Most of our crimes related to automobiles happen during the evening and early morning hours. And we have a dedicated team of 1 and 5 on the evening and 1 on 5 on the overnight, which means they work from about 11 o'clock in the night till about 8 o'clock in the morning, going after these repeat offenders, as Ms. Clark spoke about. We had a conversation with her office. We have one of these repeat offenders, Mr. Faison. He's got over 68 arrests throughout the city and a couple here in the Bronx in the 50, but most of them are related to property, littered with some narcotics convictions. But those are the people that are coming up here into the neighborhood. They don't live here for the most part. They come here to take the property of residents. And that's why we have our anti-crime teams out there at those times of the night. We're trying to focus on the right people at the right times, the right places, for the right reasons. We're not looking to put anybody in jail that doesn't belong there. We want to get the bad guys in jail so that Ms. Clark's office can conduct a fair prosecution guided by a jury. Their decision, decides the fate of these people. But we're out there every day. I know that one of those constituents just said she had lost a catalytic converter. Those things are one of our targets. We have made arrests for them, but as Ms. Clark also alluded, it's not a violent arrest. It's not a violent felony. So the judges don't have a right to set bail on those. So they're being released once again into the community. And that's something we have to work on. I know our current and past police commissioners have agreed, and as well as I, that bail did need to be reformed. But it went so far, as you spoke, Mr. Green, that who's it really favoring now? It seems to be that it's favoring the people who are being detained or arrested rather than the victims of these crimes. And whether it's a felony violence or a felony property crime, it still affects the community. And we're going to target those people and make sure we can put them where they belong. And if it's in jail or a program or restitution, we're going to try to do that and work with the district attorney's office.
Thanks a lot, Captain. Before I go, I got a few emails, complaints sent to me over the course of the last month between the last meeting and this. One thing that came up was there was a recent shooting in the evening of April 4th in front of 5223 Broadway in Marble Hill. And someone's reporting that the site has been used regularly for selling drugs. Did you get any wind of this, or I obviously you must have?
Yes. That's a location down by 225th Street, where our NCOs, under the direction of Sergeant Caprino, our NCO sergeant, we're making observations, discrete observations about that location. The concern was selling marijuana and other types of narcotics in front of the location, and how it affects the neighboring businesses on Broadway. So we are on that, 5223 Broadway.
That's right next to the Flowers by Zenda place?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay. And also, I know there was the fire at the Riverdale Diner, and from what I understand, 2 firefighters sustained injuries that required them to go to the hospital. So I was wondering if the cause of the fire was determined, and how are the firefighters doing?
I don't have information on that. The fire marshal, under the auspices of the fire department, they conduct those types of investigations.
Okay.
Since it doesn't, we don't handle that.
We can reach out to them. Okay, and also another thing that came up. I don't want to say the address because I might get the wrong one, but it's the place that used to be Barcelona Bites. I've received down at by 242nd Street. I received a lot I'm receiving complaints about that place. And I'm also receiving complaints that 311 calls are being closed out without being properly resolved. So I don't know if you want to speak to that issue, but I'm getting quite a bit of complaints, and I had complaints previously about that, but they've increased.
The complaints we had before, I'm unaware of the current ones. I know when Barcelona Bites was an active location, we addressed them with one of our March operations, and we were able to close them down because it became a problematic location within the community. I don't have information on the last complaints about 311, but I'll take a ride up there myself and see what's going on.
Okay, I mean, apparently there are a lot of complaints, and there's liquor licenses involved here. So one of the things I was told that it's kind of like if a business is that disruptive to a neighborhood, it's kind of a 3-pronged attack that'll shut them down if that's what's necessary. And it's 311 calls, it's police reports, and the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, is the DEP report about noise levels, because apparently there's a lot of noise there to all hours of the night, and that's one of the most disruptive things that's going on from what I've been hearing. So is that accurate to say if we can amass 311 calls, police reports, and a DEP reading of sound levels, that's, you know, good enough reason to say this place is, you know, not acting in good faith, to be nice?
I would say so. I would agree. We don't want that in the neighborhood. You know, good neighbors, that's what we should be to all. Like I said, Ed, we'll be going up there and investigate. I'll go up there myself, like I said, and verify those complaints that have been brought to your attention. And if there's a necessity to take police action, we'll take it. We're not going to shirk our duties.
Thank you. Keep me updated on that, please.
I will.
Sergio, you got a question for the captain?
Yeah, a couple of things, Captain. There was a with the warmer weather coming back, we had one day that it was rather warm enough. We're getting the noise again from the Fort Park area next to Our Lady of Angels on Sedgwick Avenue, Mid Reservoir.
Yes.
That's been an issue. That's been an issue for a while, and it's the neighbors are very concerned about about that happening. You know, parties going on all night, speakers out in the park. I mean, there are things that hopefully can be done about it.
Yep, we've already had a meeting with the Parks Department already about 2 weeks ago. Complaints that were received to them about Fort 4, as well as Washington's Walk, which goes right along our lake. They're deploying their people, and we're also going to keep an eye on it. Last year, during the warmer weather or good weather that the people were out there enjoying the parks facilities, we had chances to have these large speakers removed from the park area, and we shipped these people home. This year, we're going to be taking, they were forewarned, so that's fair warned. We put it out there at all community meetings that we do, and that we'll be taking enforcement actions for that noise level, and we'll be seizing the speakers. We've had similar incidents up on 3545 Jerome Avenue, which is Chandler Park. It's a congregation area for some of our car clubs, at which they do the same thing as there. They get the speakers out, they blast the music, and both the Gun Hill neighborhood as well as the Woodlawn neighborhood hear that. And we took care of that about a week and a half ago.
Right, and it's just, you know, nobody's begrudging people using the park, even at night, but I'm 4 blocks away. I really don't have to hear it in my bedroom. I mean, it's really not the issue of people even using the park. I don't think the neighbors are as offended at people using the park at night as they are that you have to hear it.
Yeah, the complaints about Fort 4 Park are split between the noise and the unauthorized barbecuing in the park. So we got the codes, park regulations from Captain Domingo Sanchez, our local PD.
I could do with a drink right now.
Sorry about that.
So we're able to work in conjunction as well as alone about taking that enforcement action of park regulations in those parks.
Thank you, Captain.
He also spoke to about, they did some work in Washington's Walk about cutting down the foliage there to kind of discourage the loitering that was up there, marijuana smoking in particular. And we got those complaints. We're working on it.
Thank you, Cap. Appreciate it.
Susan, are you still with us, Susan? You had a question earlier for Captain Gervin. Susan?
Sorry, I was muted. Pardon me. Yes, Captain, I wanted to share with you my experience when I went to the precinct to file a police report after the converter was stolen. The officer said to me that, well, you know, these are happening at night, and this is a direct quote. And I'm like, well, you do have teams on at night. They are patrolling it. So my comment to you is, I don't believe that there's enough patrolling at night in this neighborhood.
Well, we have, whatever we have is put in the streets. Like I spoke to at the beginning of the conversation, we have our regular patrol officers that have their assigned sectors. We have additional response autos assigned to the precinct, and they do various functions from the house of worship checks They're checking our train systems down here, whether it's the MTA or the Metro North. And then we have specific officers, 1 in 5 on the overnight, 1 sergeant and 5 police officers that are specifically assigned to address those conditions which affected you. The catalytic converters, the stolen cars, the tires and rims, vehicle accessories, as well as items that have been left inside the vehicles. They are specifically detailed based on crime statistics to go to certain areas at certain times to try to catch these guys, and we've had success. And
Well,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Ask another question.
I have to say, I don't see a lot of patrol cars at night.
Okay.
So that's my observation.
You
So
may not,
that's my concern,
you may not notice them.
especially since this happened to me.
They're in like regular cars. The officers are in uniform, but they're in unmarked police cars. So you may not see them.
Okay. That good to know. Good to know.
So as to all, we have 3 sector cars plus 3 response autos for the shifts. And that's what we have are allotted by manpower to this command on a tour basis. So that's we have one of those each tour. So 3 patrol cars that are assigned to our sectors or specific locations within the command, as well as 3 additional autos, plus some supervisors that are out there. And those plainclothes, well, they're not plainclothes, but they're unmarked vehicles. They work from about 4 p.m. to about 8 a.m. in the morning. And they're out there, like I said, looking for guys like Mr. Faison, who are out here stealing at a high rate. We're catching them, we're putting them in jail, but they're coming back out.
Thank you, Captain. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
I don't see, does anybody else have any questions for Captain Gervin? I don't see any hands up right now.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Sergio.
Sorry. So there used to be back a few years back, like a specific team headed by maybe the special operations lieutenant that kind of got together anytime there was an arrest on the of these kinds, like of the individual you're mentioning. I think if within the bounds of what's appropriate, that it would be helpful for us to know when these type of arrests are made, because I'd like to follow up with the DA's office and see what's going on in the court system, see what's happening or not happening, because that in real time may be helpful to change things in the community. Thank you.
Good point. Good point. Okay, so no other questions for Captain Gervin? All right, so thank you, Captain Gervin, and we'll follow up with some of these issues at our next meeting. So with that, we're going to go to this State Liquor Authority applications. We have a renewal application for Gaelic Athletic Association of Greater New York. I think we have somebody here from Gaelic.
Yes, hi, my name is Joan Henchy. I'm the chairperson of the Gaelic Association of New York.
Hey, Joan.
And we have the application in for the renewal of our liquor license.
Thank you for coming and thank you for being patient. We had a busy night tonight. Thank you for sticking with it.
Yes, you're very welcome. Just on that, I have to say the 50 precincts are amazing. We have a phenomenal relationship with them. We never cause any issues with them or otherwise, and they're always around our area. So just as a point, our liquor license is up for renewal. As you know, the construction was put on hold due to COVID. Our finances from our partner, our parent group in Ireland, froze all capital projects until the COVID restrictions and such lifted. However, we have good news. Construction has started and we are going to have a brand new facility, hopefully within 18 months completion, and it will be available not just to the Irish community, but to the entire community to use. There will be a function hall and an indoor-outdoor space, and it's going to be a phenomenal center when it's finished.
So John, this is over at Gaelic Park?
Yes.
Okay, the only thing I noticed on your application, I think this is the wrong address because they have it at 201 West 260th Street. It's 201 West 240th Street, correct?
40th Street, correct.
Okay, so I mean, that's between you and SLA. I don't see, you know, I can just speak for myself at this point, but I wouldn't have a problem approving of this application, but you would have to straighten that out with SLA as far as the address is concerned, because on the application, it says 201 West 260th Street on the first page of the application.
Okay, I can get that corrected in the morning.
Okay, so besides that, are you so what are your hours of operation? Are you is this going to be an every night thing, or just for parties, or what?
Well, obviously the center itself will be used for whoever wants to have it for meeting area, for meeting rooms and so on and so forth. I mean, the functions would be, I'm not sure, are they, because it's indoor, it wouldn't be outside. I guess they'd be to midnight for the most part. If there was a function or a wedding or, you know, birthday parties or whatever, I'm not really sure. I would be very specific to whoever is booking the venue. But in terms of everyday use, we'd be using it for meetings, and obviously the community, anyone who wanted to use the facility for a meeting or whatever, it would be open, but they'd all be early hours.
Thank you. And Captain Gervin, Ms. Henchy has some very positive things to say about you. How about, is the feeling mutual? Is this place, any issues at this place, or everything fine?
We've never had a problem with Gaelic Park. Whenever there's an event, we have a notification to us, and we'll police the event. It's mostly for traffic conditions, because some of the events, people come in from out of town and they're looking for parking, and it gets congested over there sometimes. But the events have always been peaceful, and I think we need to get them opened up and put some of those resources into the community. It's been out of service for a while, so well, we'd like to see them get back in there and provide those services to the community.
Great. Okay, so with that, is there anybody from the committee that has any questions for Ms. Henchy of Gaelic Athletic Association of Greater New York? I
hope you guys were able to preserve that beautiful old bar.
Unfortunately, that went that went with the dust. Unfortunately, there was a lot of memories there. I mean, we're over 90 years in existence, but the foundation in that facility would have been at least 100 years old. It wouldn't be up to today's safety standards. So no, unfortunately, we didn't. And we lost the phone booth as well, which I was very upset over. But we do have a beautiful facility. I'm happy to share a link to everybody as to how the building will look afterwards. It definitely will be state of the art. And again, like I said, you know, for the entire community to use, you know, whether it's for meetings or whatever, maybe even one of these meetings, it would be lovely. But again, thank you to the 50 precinct captain. I mean, we had an event there on Sunday and it went like clockwork, and we wouldn't have been able to do without our partners in the 50 precinct. So we're very grateful for them always.
Thank you, Joan. Okay, so with that, I propose we take a vote on this application, and I'm just going to say anybody who's opposed to this or is abstaining, speak now or raise your hand.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the application as amended based upon your notation, and thank the merchant for coming out even though there were no issues.
Absolutely. That sounds good to me.
Second it.
Who second? Chris?
I did, Georgia.
Oh, Georgia. Okay, motion approved.
Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate your support, and hopefully
so,
we'll have a.
Joan, the committee approves this this application, and it'll go to the full board for approval at our next board meeting. The only thing I would say is contact SLA and just make that adjustment on the address. And okay.
Thank you very much, and appreciate your time.
Likewise.
Have a safe one.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you for coming out and being patient. Thanks.
All right. God bless. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, we're gonna go to old business and the finalization of capital and expense budget request items. Excuse me. So I'm gonna just read off real quick what we have. And this is our capital budget requests as they stand. Our number one on our list is, it's actually a joint request between Public Safety and Traffic and Transportation Committee for Argus cameras, and we're requesting cameras at 4 locations: West 231st Street and Kingsbridge Avenue, West 234th Street and Bailey Avenue, West 260th Street and Riverdale Avenue, and University Avenue and Reservoir Avenue. So that's our number one. Our number two is a joint request. And well, actually, a couple of these joint requests we're either going to go it alone or we're going to get a joint request. We haven't gotten commitments from a couple of the other committees due to that their committee hasn't met yet. And I've contacted the chairs, and we're just waiting to get to make sure that these committees are on board. If for whatever reason they decide they don't want to engage in a joint request with us, we will go it alone. I just like the joint request because I feel they do. So some of these issues do go across the board, as far as I'm concerned, and the weight of having more committees behind them seem to better prioritize these requests. So our second one was, joint with Health and Hospitals and Social Services for the FDNY paramedic unit, for an FDNY paramedic unit to replace the canceled 27 Victor unit. Now, just as a footnote, I've spoken recently with Fabricio from FDNY, and that was actually that plan. It wasn't scrapped, but it was delayed. So they were going to get rid of the paramedic unit, and they've put it off. But from what he tells me, the plan is still to get rid of the unit, but they're not going to do that until October. And we still have to see data from FDNY of well, we're not going to see data until they actually try it with one unit with one unit instead of 2. So I mean, we have 15 nursing homes in this area. I'm skeptical about removing one of these emergency service units, to say the least. So even though this is going to remain in place, this unit, until October, I'd still like to keep this on the budget request list, because according to them, I'm anticipating that they are going to remove it. So we have that as our number 2, the FDNY paramedic unit to replace the canceled unit. Number 3 on the list is we're going to team up with Traffic and Transportation to add decorative park-style streetlights on Reservoir Avenue along the Reservoir side between Sedgwick Avenue and Reservoir Avenue for pedestrian safety from crime. And as somebody mentioned earlier, that there's car break-ins, there's broken glass. So when I first heard decorative park style, this came out of the TNT committee, and I was a little skeptical because it seemed like a cosmetic thing. But then I thought about it, and it's like, I think that it is very dark, and maybe it can prevent crime if the areas are more well lit in that area. Maybe it'll deter somebody from. So that's third on our list, is the park streetlights on Reservoir, on the Reservoir side, between Sedgwick and Reservoir Avenue. Fourth on the capital budget request list is, again, teaming up with TNT. Again, the same park-style streetlights on Goulden Avenue along the Reservoir side between Sedgwick Avenue and Goulden Avenue for pedestrian safety from crime. So this is the hope is that it's going to cut down on a lot of these car break-ins for stereos and whatever, because it's very dark along those areas. Before I even get to the expense, I see a couple of hands are up already. Sergio, you got something?
I believe it's on the expense side, only because I may lose you in a minute.
Oh,
Uh,
okay, if you're gonna lose me, you want us to go ahead and shoot?
Youth met last night and they decided that they would join with public safety on the joint resolution. the budget
Beautiful. Thank you for making me aware of that. I wasn't aware of that. I should have been more on top of that. So yeah, one of our, we have two things with youth for the expense. One is for the PAL after school programs and youth crime prevention services, and the other is for additional safety officers for John F. Kennedy High School. So thank you for that information, Sergio. Very helpful. Sachi, you got your hand up. What's going on?
Yeah, do we have access to the preliminary expense budget request? Is that online?
Is it online? No, it wouldn't be online at this point that I'm aware of. I have to submit it to our budget chair, and then well, I'll speak to him about that, and if at all possible, we can maybe relay this information to you. Okay, but I'll speak to our budget chair about that first.
Yeah, especially in regards to the ambulance situation. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so the expense budget requests, we have 3 of them. So as I mentioned before, well, now I'm informed that the youth committee is on board, but we're still trying to team up with both the youth committee and the education committee. I spoke to the chair of the education committee, and she says it's just a matter of their committee meeting. So regardless, it's either going to be us and youth or us youth and education. And the item is police athletic league after school programs and youth crime prevention services. I think that would be a huge benefit to this community. And I want to thank one of our committee members, Stephen Vasquez, for really, really bringing this up and getting the ball rolling on this and shedding light on this. I don't think this would even be brought up if Stephen hadn't brought this to my attention. So thanks again, Stephen, for that. And the second is Second on our list is public safety, youth, and education. It's additional school safety officers for John F. Kennedy High School. A lot of this is in light of the recent issues we've had over there, not necessarily at the school, but around the school, in terms of there being some violence going on with young people over there. Third on our list is public safety and traffic transportation and the education department, who I'm waiting on for this. But it's a school crossing guard at the intersection of Hillman Avenue and Sedgwick Avenue, especially needed at PS 95 and Am Park neighborhood schools. Now, I'm right over here, and the area, it's a mess over here. They do have a crossing guard 1 block down, but they need one here. Everybody drops off their kids, and it's just overflowing, teeming with, pedestrian traffic, car traffic, and it seems like it's an accident waiting to happen. They need to have somebody over there to monitor the kids, and we've needed that for a long time. So hopefully we can get that done. So that's what we have. I don't know if anybody has any last second things they want to add to this, but that's what we're going with at this point. And I'm going to submit them to our budget chair, David Gelman, who's on this Zoom meeting. I don't know if he has anything that he wants to add or share. If not, David, you'll be hearing from me shortly, and I'll be passing you on this list.
Sounds good to me.
All right, great. So
And you have the format that gave you March 1st.
absolutely.
Excellent. Thank
Yes.
you, sir.
You got it. All right, so with that, is there any new business? Does anybody have any new business? Anybody from the committee have any new business that they'd like to bring up? Okay, hey, Stephen, you still with us, Stephen Vasquez?
Yep, I'm with you. I'm still here.
Question, so just to kind of, I'm wrapping this meeting up, but I just wanted to give them a little teaser about next month. Is if our commitment to our speaker is still firm, and if so, maybe you could just say a couple of words, if you don't mind, about our next speaker?
Yeah, so as of right now, it's still firm. Apparently, well, one of his representatives, Rafael Mangal, works for the Manhattan Institute. It's a small think tank on criminal justice reform and whatnot. He's really big on bail reform. Actually, based on certain publications, he's a little kind of against it for various reasons. But what I intended for this was to see two different sides, right? I think DA, Darcel Clark actually provided us with a bunch of information that a lot of us weren't privy to, especially myself being in law enforcement. And it's definitely opened my eyes and, sort of like helped me have a better understanding of the issues that the city faces. But yeah, as of right now, it's definitely, still firm. If anything changes, I'll definitely relay, any particular information to you guys.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Bob Kaplan, you see your hand is up.
Sure, I'm more than interested in hearing what the Manhattan Institute is going to present next time. However, it is a policy institute as opposed to the Darcel Clark, who is a practicing district attorney. And if we're going to have a policy institute that represents one particular political proclivity, I would like to recommend that we also invite in the future another policy-driven group that has a sort of slightly different or a different point of view.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know what his point of view is and how.
The Manhattan Institute is known to be a conservative think tank.
Okay, so yeah, we're certainly open. We're open-minded to hearing all points of view on this, and we just want the best outcome for our community. So absolutely, definitely.
I think everyone wants the best outcome for our community, and I learned when I first started studying political science and got my degree in it, is that one of my greatest professors taught me to read the right, read the left, read the center, and then really figure out what's happening. So I think that it's incumbent upon us, should we be hearing from a policy institute that represents a particular point of view, to hear from other points of view so that we can have a balanced understanding of an incredibly complex subject.
Stephen, you have your hand up. Do you want to add something to that?
Yeah. So I've actually reached out to the Vera Institute of Justice, which sort of like represents the opposite side of Manhattan Institute, again, to sort of like try to get this whole holistic viewpoints of, bail reform. And specifically Insha Rahman, the VP, the Vice President of Advocacy and Partnerships.
Insha's a very dear friend. If you need any help on that, let me know.
Perfect, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Those are two very good institutions to have to discuss this issue. Well done, Stephen and Bob. I think those are two very good groups to have to represent the issue.
Okay, so that's basically it, unless anybody has anything else to add to new business. Does anybody have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Does anybody second?
Second it.
Okay, so
Second.
with that, this public safety meeting is adjourned, and I want to, once again, thank our guests. And Eric, I see you still on us. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate you and DA Clark for coming out. And everybody have a great evening and be safe.
Ed, great job getting the DA to come out. It was a very good meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.